Welcome back, everybody, to another edition of the Auburn Undercover podcast here live on the Auburn Undercover YouTube channel here on Thursday night. Jason, as we are 2 nights away from Big Cat Weekend, although we are very, very close at this point because guys are going to start to filter in on Friday, get in. We know of a visitor that will be in just on Friday, and then a lot of guys for Big Cat Weekend will get in Friday afternoon, Friday evening, before the festivities really begin on Saturday. With that, I'm going to have my Big Cat Weekend live updates rolling starting on Friday. So if you're at auburnundercover.com, you can definitely look forward to that. In terms of the show tonight, guys, I think we're going to lead off with some of the commit watch guys, and going to have an in-depth story at auburnundercover.com tomorrow as well, kind of detailing these guys' recruitments and where things stand. But we're going to touch on all of them a little bit. But then the main goal is really just to hit y'all's questions in the chat. So everyone that's here in the YouTube, I think we're live on Facebook as well. Drop your questions in the chat, and we will get to those once we kind of wrap our way through all of the commit watch guys going into Big Cat Weekend. I'm sure those will be some of the questions as well. So Jason, let's start in the 25 class, and let's start with Blake Woodby, the 4-star cornerback out of St. Francis, Maryland, a guy this will be his 4th visit to Auburn in about 4 months or so. He visited in the spring while he was still committed to Ohio State. He reopens his recruitment after that point. He officially visits Auburn shortly after that. And then a week later, he shows up to camp with his teammate Bryce Diaz, and Blake Woodby walks past, and we're like, wait a minute, that guy looks familiar. Saw him last week. That's something if Malik Autry walked by, you wouldn't necessarily turn your head or think twice because he's from Opelika. But a guy from St. Francis, Maryland, showing up 2 weekends in a row is a big deal. And, we already thought at that point Auburn sat in a good spot. Still think that Auburn sits in a good spot going into this weekend, and think that maybe a resolution could come this weekend as well if things go well.
Yeah, you're right. I think I don't want to say attitude, but his, kind of the love for Auburn, he felt coming back and bringing his teammate with him. And obviously, Bryce Diaz was pumped up enough, even really before his visit started, to say, hey, if I get an offer, I'm going to commit. And so it's obvious he'd been hearing a lot of good things about Auburn, and that came from Blake Woodby. So, I think it's one of those guys you absolutely have to watch this weekend. And it's really interesting because we talked about this 3 or 4 months ago, that corners might be a spot where they might maybe not take a bunch of guys because it wasn't as strong a class. And then all of a sudden guys started popping up, and we started seeing more and more of these guys that they really liked. And we've seen a guy commit out of that group in Dante Core. We've seen obviously Blake Woodby. All of a sudden it became a position where they go, okay, well, there's guys we really like. And so it became one where maybe we'll hold off until 2026 now we got guys we really want. And Woodby's one of those guys. And you're right, a guy to watch this weekend for sure.
Shout out to our boy Brett Greenberg in the chat. I'm assuming that's Brett from the Alabama side, if I had to imagine. I don't think there's an Auburn fan who also holds the same name as Brett Greenberg. But look, but that's our guy over at Bama 247. Great guy, great to work with. Love talking with him. I mean, I talk to him consistently every single week. We're bouncing stuff off of each other. So with that, assuming that is Brett, actually, I'm going to go with our next guy, Derek Smith, the Alabama committed to Alabama as a safety. Auburn's been recruiting him to play wide receiver, Jason. It's been a recruitment that Auburn they've loved Derek Smith for a really long time. Kalen DeBoer comes in and that staff, and Freddie Roach was the guy who had been recruiting him. He was obviously retained by DeBoer. So Alabama gets his his commitment in the spring, and since then Auburn has, they haven't given up at all. They got him in June for an official visit. He's a guy that's close with a lot of these state of Alabama guys like Alvin Henderson, Eric Winters, all those kind of guys, and he'll be back for Big Cat Weekend. He is also expected, it sounds like, to go to Alabama's Cookout, which is on Sunday. Kind of an interesting change there. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Auburn will definitely try and make a move on Saturday and see if they can get him to shut things down before he can even get to Tuscaloosa on Sunday. But Jason, we'll kind of have to see where the weekend leads.
Yeah, this is a guy that, again, this staff has been recruiting very heavily really since Marcus Davis walked through the door, is one of the guys that he put a big emphasis on. He's visited several times. And obviously was a guy early on, and we thought for a long time that Auburn was the team to beat until he committed to Alabama, and everything changed pretty quickly. But for a long time, we thought Auburn was definitely the team to beat there, and so that's why they've stayed in the picture. We saw it with Alvin Henderson. We've seen it with others that they continue to recruit guys and go, hey, look, we're still going to be there, and that's what they've done with Derek Smith. And this guy that I think I saw him play basketball the first time as a ninth grader. And so I think I've been watching him now for almost 4 years. He is a guy, as someone just mentioned in the chat, it went by and I couldn't remember the name, but about Unreal Stats. This guy, Mr. Beautiful there, yes, he had 13 interceptions as a freshman at Southside Selma as a safety. We saw him last year, Christian, and he's coming off the edge looking like Keontae Scott, playing kind of a hybrid rover spot on defense, and then catching the ball on offense, playing almost every snap. He reminds me a lot of Malcolm Simmons in that I think he could play either side of the ball and wouldn't have an issue wherever he wound up. He reminds me of the same guy. I think he gets I think he'll be a wide receiver, but he absolutely could play safety and jump out there pretty quickly, in my opinion.
Here's his stats through 3 seasons at Southside Selma. 4,075 career receiving yards, 30 receiving touchdowns. He has also ran for over 1,000 yards with 17 rushing touchdowns. Defensively, he has 268 tackles, 29 tackles for loss, 16 sacks, 21 interceptions, and 14 PBUs. So yes, unreal stats across the board. That is why Alabama is recruiting him as a safety and Auburn's recruiting him as a wide receiver. He can do it all, and he is a very interesting, very raw, very fun football player wherever he lands in college. It'll be fun to kind of track how he continues to develop and grow. With that, let's move to the 2026 class. That is where there could be some major moves this weekend. There could be in 25 as well, as we've just touched on. But one of the biggest guys that Auburn could potentially get in the boat this weekend, Jason, Hezekiah Harris. He's been, I wrote it in a story earlier today. He's been a mainstay at every single Auburn recruiting event or big football game or anything like that, really, since Hugh Freeze has been hired. He has not missed an event. He's always there. So it feels like it would be fitting that if he did commit to Auburn, and we think Auburn is the leader right now, that he would do it at a recruiting event at Big Cat Weekend.
Yeah, a guy that has, again, another one, since the ninth grade, he has been a part of Auburn recruiting events. He came with teammates when he was at Anniston before he made the move to Mae Jemison, up in the Madison area. He has been coming to Auburn since he was in the ninth grade. It seems weird that he's already going to be a junior, because it seems like yesterday, you're looking at him and go, man, a long time away from him. He's still got a couple of years, but it's getting closer. But big time pass rusher, the guy that has a ton of offers all over the place, but man, he has built a strong bond with this Auburn staff. Josh Aldridge, guy that's recruiting that position now with him at that edge position. He is a true pass rushing edge. That's what he would be. And so, you start talking about potential guys to pay attention to. Hezekiah Harris has been right there for, it feels like, the last year almost, that, hey, man, something could happen anytime soon. It does feel like now it's getting closer, and heck, it could happen this weekend.
Another guy who's kind of in a similar boat, I would say, Jermichael Garrett, another 4-star linebacker. This more of a true linebacker. Hezekiah Harris, a buck linebacker. But Jermichael he's been to Auburn a bunch now. It's been more recently. It's been over the past year or so. But it feels like every time I look up, he's on campus. And it's even, other just days where he'll show up. He's really close. He's originally kind of from the Oxford area, close with New Boy Fagans, close with Caleb Harris, Sylvester Smith, Braden Joyner. I'm sure there's a couple more names I'm still leaving off here that are currently on Auburn's team. It's that kind of crew grew up together and has been really close. And Jermichael, one of the things I always think about when I think about Jermichael Garrett is he posted a picture at one point in the locker room hanging out, and he's like, I'm up here so much, I might as well just move in already. And, he's just saying that and joking. But this is a guy that we think Auburn could make a move with this weekend. And he's not wrong when he says could move in. He's on campus all the time.
Yeah.
LSU has made a big move, and they're still recruiting him heavily. But it just feels like Auburn has positioned itself so well here that an event like Big Cat could get him excited just enough to, maybe make a move.
Yeah, and Antonio Kite, another guy
Yes. Yep.
that came in too. And so, yeah, there's a big group of guys that know each other, and I think it's a drawing card. And we'll see if it works for Jermichael Garrett, but another guy we saw play last year at Gulf Shores. Obviously, they had a loaded team, and you could see him when he walks on the field. You go, man, that's an SEC player. It doesn't take long to pick him out of a lineup, and so just another part of a 26 class, and there'll be another guy or two that we talk about too out of that group that you start talking about. When you think about positions, we talked about DB. We saw last year Auburn do it with offensive linemen going, okay, look, the class is not as strong, but it's not that it's a terrible class, but it's so good in 2025 that they were kind of pushing things towards this year. It may be the same thing with linebacker for Auburn going, okay, it's a good class of linebackers and you want to get a couple, but man, you want to load up in 2026 because the group is so good. And, this is one of the guys. And we just mentioned Hezekiah. Another guy there is Shadarius Tootle. We saw this picture from San Antonio. Christian, we saw him and knew he was there, knew he was coming, and it didn't take long for him to show out. And he's added offer after offer after Auburn offer, and he'll come back this weekend with his whole family, and we'll see if Auburn can make enough of a push to get him in the boat.
Yeah, he's definitely a guy that we're going to be watching really closely. And you mentioned it. I mean, in terms of January, February, March or so, he was one of the hottest recruits out there in the country in terms of landing offers. I was going through and looking at his offer list right now. I mean, it's everybody. It's Ohio State, Michigan, Oregon, USC. I think Texas was on there, Auburn, obviously, South Carolina, Tennessee, wherever. It didn't matter. He was getting all the big offers in a short amount of time because of what he did in San Antonio. Obviously plays at Cottage Hill down there in Mobile in Alabama. A little bit of a lower classification. Jason, I think they're 3A if I remember correctly. So not the most exposure necessarily. Some people weren't sure based off his film, kind of what is he? Is he growing into an edge rusher? Is he an outside linebacker? What can he be? Once we got to see him in San Antonio and once that film got out there for everybody, it was clear, look, this is a guy who could be a really, really good outside linebacker, has all the tools, all the size to eventually be that. And it would be a really quality pickup for Auburn. You mentioned the 26 class, a guy like Anthony Tank Jones. Yep. That's a guy that Auburn sits in a good spot with and will be back on Saturday. Jaquez Wilkes from Wadley. Look, there's so many guys. Jordan Carter is a 5-star edge rusher from Douglas County that we added to the visitor list this week as well, courtesy of Brett Greenberg, actually. Shout out to Brett for that one.
Yeah, I mean, and so think about Grayson, Tyler Atkinson, 26, and his teammate. I mean, it is a loaded linebacker group in 2026. And if you're Auburn, you go, okay, try to get your guys. And hey, Tootle absolutely belongs in that group. He is. You're right, longer body. A guy that I think could easily play at 235, when he gets to the next level and be a guy that can carry it easily. So looking forward to seeing him. We got a chance to get to know his dad, his family while they were in San Antonio. So they'll be up, and it'll be a big weekend for them too, to kind of see everything and get a feel for what Auburn's all about.
Yeah, and the interesting thing with the 26 class too, and I wrote about this earlier over at auburnundercover.com, but playing with the class calculator, now, you cannot account for other schools also getting commitments, which I'm sure other schools will also get 2026 commitments this weekend. So that'll impact the rankings. And look, there's no way to truly account for that. But Auburn obviously has Cale Ellis and Denarius Gregg committed right now. If you get Hezekiah Harris, you would instantly jump from 12. They're ranked 12th right now to 5. If you get just one of Tootle or Jermichael Garrett, doesn't matter which one it is, you would jump up to number 2 in the country. And if you got both of them, if you got both Tootle and Jermichael Garrett to pair with Hezekiah Harris, if all 3 of those 26 guys committed, with the way the points are right now, you would jump Florida State and you would have the number 1 class in the country in 2026. Again, you have to take into account that other schools will also be getting guys this weekend. And so other schools will also be getting points. But in terms of the way the points are right now, theoretically, if you got 3 2026 commitments, you and Florida State would be the only school with 5 commitments in that 2026 class, and you would have more points than Florida State. So something to watch this weekend if Auburn can go 3 for 3 there in 2026, which we do think is possible. I would lean towards maybe going 2 for 3 there, and maybe one guy holds off and decides to wait a little bit longer. But you never know. Big Cat is the event, Jason, where it's always you have to say you never know because Big Cat can lead to some crazy stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you're right. It can be a situation where momentum builds during a day, and you start to see guys, and guys go, okay, I'm ready to go. I think there'll be some guys that go, I'm that plan to do it and do those things, but there may be a guy or two that says, hey, I was just waiting for something. I found it today. Let's roll. And so sometimes when those things happen, it might be Sunday, Monday. So it could be a filter of the next, week before you start to really see the full repercussions of it. But I think it has a chance to build some momentum, and for it to, if you, like I said, if you were to do it in that 26 class, then that'd be a pretty good starting block for the next year, even though we're still sitting here and it's not quite August yet.
Yeah. Two guys that are also kind of quote unquote on commit watch, but these guys already have dates planned to announce something after. Anquan Fagans will announce on July 29th. He is visiting LSU tomorrow on Friday. If you're listening to this, that might be today. But we're recording this on Thursday night, obviously. We'll be in Auburn on Saturday, and then also expected in Alabama on Sunday. However, Auburn is the team to beat there. They have positioned themselves very well. Jason, we're going to pair this up with a question in the chat from Joe Roberts. Any chance guys like Fagans that have commitment dates after Big Cat weekend are pressured to commit on Saturday, or a coach is okay with them waiting until their commit date? My personal answer would be no, as in coaches are okay with them waiting, especially with Anquan Fagans. I think Auburn, Charles Kelly, I think all those people involved in this recruitment feel pretty comfortable about where the Tigers sit. And Big Cat has a chance to kind of really solidify that.
Yeah, and I don't think this is one. I think it'd be different if you're like, hey, I'm thinking about making a decision next week. I'm not really sure. This one's one that's been planned for quite a while. They already have a venue and they got some things. So this is a little bit different. And so I think because of that, you're okay. You're like, hey, make sure that you've done everything you can do. But like I said, I think Auburn, you'd have to feel pretty confident going in this weekend. Obviously, things can change, but I don't think hey, this they've got an announcement. Family has a venue and all the kind of things in Birmingham. So, yeah, you push this one, and they may say, "Oh, well, no, we'll just go somewhere else because we want to do it this way." And so, how they want to do it is how you want to do it.
Yes, and then one other one to watch, Jared Smith. He will announce a week from Saturday, on August 3rd, the 5-star edge rusher. Expected back in for Big Cat. Jason, you talked to Alvin Henderson, and Alvin said he wasn't sure if Jared Smith was going to be there. He is expected. Even if for some reason he wasn't there, I would not be overly concerned. I think Auburn sits in a good spot there. And Jason, it'd be a fantastic addition to that edge room. A very dynamic guy who has all the pieces, hasn't necessarily put all the pieces together quite yet, but he has everything you would ever want out of an edge rusher, and can do a lot there as well. So this would be, if Auburn is able to get him on August 3rd, it would be a really good one. It would be one that obviously we'll be watching closely on Saturday to see whether or not he shows up, and then kind of what the buzz is continuing after that.
Jared's the guy that came from Spain Park. I think probably heard about him maybe the first time a freshman. Another guy that we've seen play basketball in addition to his football, and he moved to Thompson last year. Didn't play, just kind of sat and practiced and worked. It'll be really interesting to see him in that Thompson defense and what he does, because physically he has all the tools. There's no question about that. This is a guy that Auburn doesn't have. Auburn has edge rushers. They have speed and they have some power. They don't have the length that a Jared Smith has. I mean, this guy's 6'6". I think a guy that plays 6'6", 265, 270 easily, similar to a Keldrick Falk, but I think he's not going to be what Keldrick is now, probably 285, 290. I don't think Jared ever gets to that, but I think he's a bigger, longer edge type player for you. And again, Auburn doesn't have a guy like that. So I think that makes Jared Smith a really interesting fit if Auburn can land him. And like I said, a guy that has all the tools to one of those guys that as soon as that switch flips, then he becomes a dominant player on the defensive line.
Yeah. Now that we've gotten through all those names, we're going to roll through questions in the chat. So, like I said earlier, anyone that has questions, be sure to drop them. We're now going to get through those and answer those. I know one from the message board was already about Derek Smith, so we've already touched on that. And Donald from the message board also wanted to know, do we think there will be a moment where Hugh Freeze is thrown in the pool again? If they get enough commitments, I know they're going to cap off the day, Jason, with the pool party there again before the food trucks and the ice cream and all that kind of stuff to end it. So if you have a good enough day, I think Hugh Freeze would be perfectly happy getting thrown in the pool.
Yeah, yeah,
So
you might just jump in if it's good enough. Just say, "Hey, you didn't got to throw me in. I'll go." And so, yeah, if it's good enough day, they may all go this time around. So, if they do, then you would know it would be a very impressive day for the Tigers.
Here's one from Eric, just stating I want Andrew Babalola and Malachi Goodman the most. Both of those offensive line targets are not going to be at Big Cat weekend. They're not visiting anywhere this weekend. However, Auburn is still definitely in the mix with both of those guys. I think it's possible Auburn gets one of them, but it's fighting an uphill battle a little bit for both of them. But Auburn is definitely in it for sure. Another one from Eric. He said, why would Deuce Knight want Notre Dame's brand over showing off versus Georgia and Bama with battle of top 5 recruiting classes since Auburn has gotten a proven coach? Look, Notre Dame has a lot working in its favor in terms of being a national brand and a lot of alumni, stuff like that. They play on the biggest stage as well. So there's a lot of attractive features when you think about Notre Dame.
Yeah, and so I think this is one where who knows? We don't know what Deuce Knight wants. He's committed to Notre Dame. He very well could end up being committed to Auburn, and so yeah, I think there are different things for different guys, and some guys want opportunity for playing time. Some guys want I want to go where I'm developed. You have both of those things at Auburn, and I think that's going to be a selling point, and it's closer to home. There are a lot of positives for Auburn, and I think those are things that Auburn is selling to Deuce Knight, KJ Lacey, whoever else, at quarterback position, and all the other guys. You're going to have an opportunity to play on the biggest stage, and it's a program that they feel like, hey, you put the pieces in place to be on the rise, and so long way to go between now and December for a lot of these guys. Even though a lot of it feels like it's getting done, there's still a long time between now and Sunday.
Question from Cam here. Any O-line planning to attend? I already mentioned that Babalola and Goodman would not be there. In terms of 25, you'll get all 5-year commitments back on campus this weekend, which will be huge. Always good to get guys like Brody Scholl and Tavares Dice. I know that was a question coming up. Always good to get those guys back on campus, all of them. And then you'll have some 2026 guys there as well. So definitely some O-linemen there on campus. Jason, question here from Jacob, and I will tee this one up to you. Quarterback or no quarterback at Big Cat weekend? What are you thinking?
Visiting or getting a quarterback? I mean, either way.
I'm assuming visiting.
I don't know that they get a quarterback to visit, and I don't know that it really matters one way or the other. Would it be nice to have guys on campus? Absolutely. Will it be the be all end all of whether you get one of those guys at the end? No, it won't. So, those guys have both been on campus. Deuce Knight was one of the first guys that even visited when these guys were hired way back, coming from Mississippi. Obviously, KJ Lacey's been on campus a bunch. So, I would expect both of those guys to be on campus at some point. Early in the season, heck, sometime here soon, maybe. Who knows? But yeah, I don't know that anybody's on campus this weekend. But again, I don't know that really has an impact on whether or not Auburn gets either one of those guys or somebody else.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would agree with that completely. There's plenty of irons in the fire there in terms of figuring stuff out, and not necessarily other quarterbacks, but Auburn has things working where they'll get something figured out there. I'm pretty confident of that. Question from Michael: is AK Deer coming? No. Auburn has not really been involved too heavily with him. Alabama is the trending team there. And is Chroma? Yes, Usman Chroma is expected to visit. If Freeze is wanting 5 scholarship guys at running back, is what Freeze wants, then do we take 3 running backs in the class? I think 3 total running backs, absolutely possible. I think 3 high school running backs, probably not going to happen. I think it'd be like an Usman Chroma, Alvin Henderson, and a transfer guy would be more realistic. Just recruiting 3 guys at a spot is really, really tough. A spot like that, offensive line, obviously different, but even looking at tight end, Ben Angamoa went into the 25 class looking for 3 tight ends, and He's got Ryan G and Hollis Davidson, but it's so difficult to get a third guy at a spot like that where one guy's on the field, maybe two guys on the field at once, or Auburn.
You want to have a little class balance too. And that's part of it now that the transfer portal offers you is some class balance where you, instead of having three guys to where you either battle guys and the third guy leaves, or they all stay and they all leave, and then you have a big gaping hole. I could see you going and trying to find a guy with some experience to go along with that young group and the Jeremiah Cobb. But again, really have to see how the season plays out too. And how things go. But I don't think you'd sign three high school running backs. No.
Question from Jesse here. Auburn needs another 4 or 5-star player along the defensive line. Obviously got Malik Autry, got Jordan Crawford committed. I still think Auburn is in it with Antonio Coleman, the Alabama commit. They like Xavier Hardy, the JUCO guy as well. Some other names there, Floyd Buchard, who recently committed to Oklahoma. He's a guy that Auburn's been monitoring. Nate Marshall, the Michigan commit, Auburn's still involved there. So I think when the dust is settled in December, Auburn will have some more pieces there along the defensive line. Probably 2 more if I had to guess. I don't know if it'll be 2 more blue chippers or 2 more 5-stars, but I think they'll get 2 more guys they like along the defensive line.
Yeah, and I think you kind of throw a Jared Smith into the mix, talking about kind of that defensive line group, but with the guys they have already, a guy like Antonio Coleman, I think, would be a game changer. With you'd have 3 really different types of guys, all interior guys, and Jordan Crawford, the power monster guy inside, Malik Autry, the big athletic guy that has all the tools to go out and be a Derek Brown type of guy. Once again, that switch flips for him, and then Antonio Coleman is just classic, just playmaker, nose guard guy that's really athletic, twitchy, but doesn't look like that guy. And so I think he would be a great addition for them if they could. Again, you had to make some flips, but we've seen those things happen before, and that's the way obviously recruiting is now, because so many guys get committed even before the spring's over with, that you're still recruiting, still going, trying to get those guys on your class before it's over with.
Another question from Michael here, who also said he's on the board, MTV Tiger 72. So thank you, Michael, for being over at Auburn Undercover. Definitely recognize that name. He asked about Dice, so yeah, we touched on that earlier. And then is Johnson, the linebacker, going to be the Bama commit, as in Daryl Duke Johnson from Dodge County. That's his high school there in Georgia. Think there's a chance he's there. Don't have that confirmed. Have been trying to get in contact with him. Haven't been able to get into contact. With Alabama's recruiting event being on Sunday, that opens up the window for Alabama commits to visit Auburn on Saturday. And for that matter, Alabama could go out and get Auburn commits on their campus on Sunday. So this is kind of the first time we've seen Alabama have its recruiting event at the end of July on a different date. So certainly possible that Duke Johnson is there, although don't know that for certain. So we'll wait and see what happens on Saturday. Wait and see if he shows up, I guess. Question here from Brad. What was the highest Auburn was ranked for 2025? The highest I remember them being ranked was 4th. He said they did fall. True. According to most services. So talking about 2026 right now doesn't make a lot of sense. Brad, I get what you're saying, but if Auburn is on the verge of getting commitments in 2026, we can't just not talk about it. So I get what you're saying about 25 still needing to rebound a little bit, but you should get Blake Woodby. You should get Anquan Fagans. You should get Jared Smith. You're in a chance. You're fighting for a quarterback. You're fighting to try and flip Derek Smith. You're fighting for some of these other guys. So you're in a spot where you should vault back inside the top 10 here soon. And then you're back up in the sweet spot a little bit of where Hugh Freeze would want to be. Question from Jesse. Any chance Auburn will get Juju Lewis? I mean, there's a chance, but I would favor Deuce Knight and KJ Lacey a little bit more in terms of Auburn's chances to get a quarterback right now.
Yeah. And again, you never say never in recruiting or anything. It's felt like that has kind of turned towards the other guys. Maybe it turns back. We'll see, but he has been on campus. He's taken an official visit. He went to camp 7-on-7. So there's been a lot of interaction with him. He's been on campus much more than the other 2 guys have lately. Those other 2 guys, and Deuce Knight and KJ Lacey, were on campus more than him early on in the process with this coaching staff. So there's been some back and forth a little bit.
Question here from Casey. I don't know if he's an Alabama fan or if he's been talking to Alabama fans or something. He said, "Is Cam Coleman leaving?" So either an Alabama fan trolling or someone trolling him for that matter.
Leaving where? I mean,
He's not leaving Auburn. I can tell you that at least right now.
yeah. I mean, he's here. They start practicing in less than a week. So no, he's here and playing. So we'll see this fall.
Question from Ant. Do you think Shakai Mills Knight and Usman will show up, and can Auburn get both? I think both are strong candidates to show up. Expect both of them there right now, actually. I don't think Auburn can get both. I don't think that's a possibility. Again, like you said, never say never, but I would be surprised if Auburn got three really high level high school running backs like that all in the same class. Because I mean, if you're talking about Alvin Henderson, Usman Chroma, and Shakai Mills Knight, that's three really, really, really good running backs all together at once. Realistically, you're good with Alvin Henderson, obviously, and then I think you get one of Shakai Mills Knight and Usman Chroma, and go from there. Question here from Stark: could it be possible for us to get back in with Juju, as we were just talking about there a little bit? And what's going on with wide receiver recruiting? Quick, we'll touch on the wide receiver recruiting. We touched on Derek Smith earlier. Obviously, talked about him. Think there's a chance that he could end up in this class when it's all said and done. You're still recruiting Caleb Cunningham, even though he committed to Alabama and he announced that he won't be at Big Cat Weekend. Still recruiting him. Sam Turner, a Georgia Tech wide receiver commit, will be in this weekend. He's a guy that's kind of rising up the board a little bit. You're still flirting with CJ Wiley a little bit, the Florida State commitment, seeing if maybe there's anything there. The thing about Auburn and its 25 wide receiver recruiting is, look, you just took four really good guys. You're not just going to reach for somebody in the 2025 class because you know if they come in and they're not good enough for the standard that you want, they're just sitting behind those 24 guys and they're not pushing them at all. They're not pushing for playing time. They're not getting on the field. They're not making an impact for you. And the 26 class is also really strong. Denarius Gray is already committed. You're going after Devin Carter, going after Sedarian Morgan, going after Aaron Gregory. There's a bunch of guys out there. So I think Auburn will end up with one or two guys that they like in the 25 class. Derek Smith may be one of them. And then maybe you go to the portal for a guy or two, and then you keep developing those 24 guys, obviously, as well.
Yeah, I think it's very similar to what we were talking about linebacker. You go grab a couple of top guys, and have big classes maybe every other year. I think that is, you kind of think about it in terms of what you do in college. You used to do college baseball where you used to have to plan for every 3 years. This guy's going to be going after 3 years, get drafted. It has changed a little bit in baseball. Football is almost that cycle where you go, hey, every other year you think about it in terms of kickers. They like, hey, have a guy capable of redshirting and coming in and being the guy the next year. I think if you're Auburn, if you could, because of the depth you've got and the young guys, I think if you could go, hey, get a couple of stud guys that are physical, athletic, fit what you want to do, then, hey, if you have a hole, you can go grab a transfer for a year and then sign a big class next year. I think there are ways to do that, and I think this could be that type of year.
We're going to rapid fire a couple of these here real quick. Malcolm, Jared Smith looks 7 feet tall. Yes, he is extremely tall.
He's 6'6" and was a basketball player first. He was more of a basketball guy early on in his career, so he's pretty tall.
Here's one from Lil B. If we get Deuce, then why didn't we just go after Aaron Noland? They're both lefties, but they are completely different football players, and they're also not in the same recruiting class. So that would be why. Question from Corey. If we sign Derek Smith, who benefits the most, Charles Kelly or Marcus Davis? Good question. Auburn thinks it will be Marcus Davis, but
he could. I mean, like I said, I mentioned earlier, he could easily play defense. There'd be no question about it. I think he could easily play defense. I think he would be a wide receiver. The good news is for Auburn is Charles Kelly's a guy that's had a relationship with him because that's kind of been his recruiting area forever. And so he knows the family, and Marcus Davis is recruiting him for position. So you kind of get a double whammy in terms of benefiting, because it would benefit both those guys because it makes your team better.
Here's one from MTV. Are y'all doing look-ins during the weekend with Big Cat? I don't know if he means podcasts or live shows or stuff like that, but we're going to obviously have our live updates. This is the story card that'll be on the website once we start that up tomorrow. Also doing something special in the works for the YouTube and stuff like that. I'll share a little bit of what the plan is. Hopefully, it works out as I'm hoping for. Not everything always goes according to plan, but already have some guys that have agreed to shoot a couple little 20 30-second video clips and send them to us exclusively, and kind of make a big cat behind the scenes vlog that we can put up on the YouTube channel. So hopefully that comes together really well. I want those guys to enjoy their visit. I don't want them to be shooting vlog videos for us the whole time. So I just want a quick little short video from each of them. So not pressuring them, but hoping that something comes together for that. That would be kind of a look in that I don't think has really ever been done before. So that would be a lot of fun if that does come together. Here's one from Efficient Gaming, and Fort Myers asked a similar question. If there was a surprise visit this weekend, who do you think it would be? Well, that's tough. Wouldn't be a surprise.
Then.
I mean, we touched on Duke Johnson. That one wouldn't shock me if he showed up. Wouldn't shock me if a guy like Antonio Coleman showed up. Wouldn't shock me if CJ Wiley's already going to Florida State this weekend, so that one would shock me.
Yeah, I'd say
third Scroggins. I'll say third Scroggins.
That would be one. When you think about, could they get third on campus? They continued to recruit him. We thought Auburn was the team to beat until he went to Miami and committed. That would be one where you look up and you go, okay, that the old cartoon where the light bulb pops up beside your head. If third gets on campus this weekend, then that would make the light bulb pop up beside my head going, okay, that's interesting.
Which he's not expected to visit Miami for their event this weekend.
Yeah, and so he is absolutely a guy, ranking, no ranking, whatever it is, he's absolutely a guy that is very, very high on Auburn's board.
Yeah, so I mean, that wouldn't even be a true surprise, though, in my mind, because that's a guy that's on my radar. Like last year, two of the surprises were Nye Carr committed to Georgia, TJ Lockhart, Tyler Lockhart's older brother, who ended up committing to Mississippi State. We knew about Nye Carr, but Auburn had not really been mentioned whatsoever for months. So he was not, on the big board. He was not a guy we were tracking. And TJ Lockhart was a name I honestly had never even heard of before that weekend. So those were true surprises.
There will be somebody like that, I believe. And when there are, normally there's a reason why they're surprises, because they've kind of come out of nowhere.
Yes. One from Lil B. Rumor has it our wide receiver from the 26 class is reclassing to 25. Did see that rumor. That was a couple months ago. Not true. He's not reclassifying. That was just a rumor. Question from Drex. Do some schools use NIL to keep commits from visiting other schools? No, I don't think that really happens. Although some Auburn fans claim that happened.
I do believe that some folks use NIL to get guys to visit.
Yes, to visit. Yes,
I think that's a possibility. And then, hey, you commit. Hey, don't visit anywhere. Maybe after you're committed. I think there's some things that get done, but those are things that happened before NIL was ever involved either. So it's not that it's that big of a change.
Let's see. We'll touch on a couple more here. Everyone's talking about Derek Smith and what position he could be. As Malcolm said, Derek Smith is a football player. That is exactly what he is.
Yep.
Question from Stark again. Do you think Auburn might not get a quarterback and grabs one from the portal after the season? I think Auburn gets a high school quarterback and gets one from the portal. And that has been my mentality the whole way, whether it was Juju Lewis, whether it's Deuce Knight, whether it's KJ Lacey, whether it's a name we don't know. I think Auburn gets a high school guy and a portal guy.
Yeah,
I think it will just depend on how much you need a portal guy.
Yeah, I think the thing we don't know is what happens this season. Peyton Thorne goes out and lights it up and plays great, and you go, hey man, you can go sign the best quarterback you got, but you still don't have anybody that would have played a significant snap. So you're going to have to go get a portal guy to give you somebody with experience. Now, if Peyton Thorne doesn't play well, or one of the other guys has to come in because of an injury and they light it up and they play great, then maybe it changes things a little bit, because then maybe you have a quarterback coming back that threw for 3,000 yards and 30 touchdowns, and all of a sudden your quarterback room looks completely different. But you don't know that now. And so now you go, what would your guess be? Yeah, your guess would be that you're probably going to have to find a guy with some experience, at least to compete with these young guys next year. Christian, you went out muted. I can't hear you.
Whoops. Sorry about that. MTV is Melendez coming to Big Cat Weekend. Is in Elijah Melendez, the Miami commit. Not expected to, but I would put him in the same category as a Duke Johnson, as a third Scroggins, as Antonio Coleman, where he could show up. I would be more surprised if he did show up than the other guys, but it's a possibility. But it is not a name we have on our list. He is not a guy that we are expecting by any means. Jesse's question kind of went to your point. What's the plans for Walker White? He's a good quarterback. Keep developing.
Yep, that's it.
Keep working.
Develop, see how much you can make a move. This preseason is going to be big, I think, for all three of the other guys to go out and see if you can capture the number 2 spot to get those valuable reps. Because once you get past 2, it becomes really hard to get enough reps after about the first 2 weeks of training camp to really make a push until bowl practices. Then you can get some reps again. It's almost impossible during bowl prep weeks, and there are a couple of bye weeks this week could give you a little bit this year to give you a little bit more work. But I think for Walker White, how much of a push can you make in preseason camp? Because if you're even, then you're leaving. If you're the young guy and you're even, then you're the guy that's going to get it. They're going to go, okay, here you go. So I think how much of a push can he make in preseason these few weeks? So will be really important for him.
Yeah, he's grinding away. Got a chance to talk with him just a little bit and talk with his family. Y'all keep praying for his mom battling breast cancer, but great family, great people. And I know Walker's grinding away, getting ready for fall camp. Drex brings up a good point. Great quarterback, Walker, but have to get a quarterback every class. Absolutely agree.
Yep.
Here's one from Seth. Call your shot. Who's the high school quarterback in the 25 class? It's a tough question. Tough question. Tough to put me on the spot. I would say one of Deuce Snyder, KJ Lacey. I don't know if I could give you an answer and it would have enough credible information behind it to truly.
I'm kind of the same. I think Auburn winds up with one of those 2 guys, I believe. They're different types of players, but both that are really good players. So I would lean the same direction.
If I had to pick, I'd probably lean Deuce very slightly, but we'll see what happens. More questions about Juju. Could he show up? Yes, he certainly could show up, but not a name that we're expecting by any means. Question from Brad. Touch on this real quick. Are the bulk of guys showing up tomorrow or Saturday? The bulk showing up on Saturday, but I know there are some guys showing up on Friday. Already have about 3 or 4 names that I know of that I will put in our live updates thread once that launches tomorrow at auburnundercover.com. So be on the lookout for that. And then we will actually, there's 2 questions in here that we'll still touch on real quick. Do you think we flip Neem Offord, Jaws? Any word on Neem Offord?
I'll go. I think if that happens, it's going to be December. I think that one would be Auburn goes out and lights it up. They play really well, and everything that he has seen as a possibility comes true. I don't think that's one that happens now if it happens. But I do think Auburn is in the picture. I mean, he hung around for a long time after the official visit, came out, walked around, did a bunch of things. I think Auburn is in the picture, but I think it would be down the road, I believe.
No, I agree with that completely. And talked to him week and a half ago, whatever it was, when we were at the 7-on-7. He said as of that time, he planned to visit Oregon this weekend instead of Auburn. Maybe some of this travel outage issues will change that. Even if the travel outage changes don't change that, I still wouldn't be surprised if he shows up on Saturday, but not necessarily a name that we're truly expecting. MTV, is Auburn still recruiting Longstreet? Probably still talking to him a little bit, but don't think there's going to be anything there. His older brother's already enrolled at Texas A&M as a football player. And then the question that we're going to close things out with today, because Corey knows the best place to come for baseball information. Question for Jason. Is the baseball team done grabbing guys from the transfer portal?
Yeah. If they could get a guy that just wanted to come to Auburn and play and compete, that maybe had a year left, I think that could happen. The issue is, and it's a great problem to have. The great problem to have is that it looks like they may get all their guys from their signing class on campus, and you don't count on that happening. And so it is not football where you go, yeah, you got 85 guys. Now, next year, it wouldn't be as much of an issue, but this year it's still 11.7 scholarships. So you've still got some NIL money, and you're still doing some of those things. But you got to try to make the math work. And I think right now it's going to be tight, because you go, hey, you're signing guys, and you're always going to sign more because you would expect you're going to lose a couple of guys. and right now they're not going to lose anyone unless something changes. So because of that, it's a balancing act on trying to make the money work and the numbers work for them from a scholarship standpoint. So if they get somebody, it's going to be somebody that says, "Hey, I'm coming. I'll pay my own way for a little while and come on," because I don't know if there's a whole lot of money left for them at the moment.
Touch on one more here real quick because I realized Pace asked a question earlier and I saw it in the chat and accidentally scrolled over it and asked again. It's a great question. Can Zion Grady be a flip candidate? Yes, absolutely. Auburn's still recruiting him. He's probably going to be in for Big Cat Weekend, is what he told us. Definitely a guy that we expect there on Saturday. Don't think of flip candidate as in this weekend, but as the season goes along, how he performs at Enterprise, what Auburn needs at edge, at defensive end, kind of where he fits in. Absolutely a guy that they're going to keep recruiting. They're going to keep talking to him until December and see kind of where things go.
And that's a guy that, obviously Eric Winters, current teammate, but him and Alvin Henderson are really close. He was at Charles Henderson before that, Alvin at Elba. So there's some connections for him on this Auburn team and guys that are committed. So, Auburn's going to continue to recruit him. He's a guy that's changed his body dramatically. He's a big physical kind of defensive end type player now, but he's playing outside linebacker when we saw Enterprise in 7-on-7, really athletic and really nice kid. I really like Zion Grady a whole lot. And so, it'd be interesting to see if he shows up back this weekend, because I do think it feels like the same thing with Naeem. It feels like if it's not Ohio State, then it might be Auburn. But can they make enough of a push to get over the top?
I will touch on this question literally instantly from Stark. When's the last time Deuce visited? He visited last spring, so spring of 2024. Right. Wait, no, this is 2024. Spring of 2023.
Yeah.
All the recruiting classes, this being the 25 class, the years sometimes get lost. It's also 9:15. Have a lot of stories that I've written today, getting ready for the weekend, and we're at 45 minutes on the podcast. So we're going to wrap things up there. Appreciate everyone for tuning in. Appreciate everyone that listens later on Friday. This will be up on Friday morning, so you can get ready for Big Cat Weekend. By the time you're listening to this, most likely the live updates will already be rolling, or they will be very close to rolling. We already have some other stories up on Friday morning as well that are planned. Commit watch, everything you need to know, visit list, itinerary, kind of all put into one piece there. So we will have that for y'all at auburnundercover.com. Again, appreciate everyone for tuning in. Probably catch you guys again on Sunday night if I had to guess. Probably do a recap from the weekend. We'll see kind of how the schedule goes. But again, appreciate everyone for tuning in, and we will catch you guys soon.